Donald Duck's 50th birthday was a massive super campaign put on by Disney back in the 80s. And it was made up of dozens of individual campaigns that were just truly cool. From Donald's honorable discharge from the Army through to live ducks following the Donald Duck character through the Disney theme parks. We're going to talk about all of that and the lessons we can learn in today's episode of Marketing the Magic. So, hello again, I am John Delancey, the head Disney nut and marketing aficionado here at Marketing the Magic. We are a community for small business owners who want to learn better marketing strategy and tactics through lessons inspired by the Walt Disney theme parks, movies, marketing campaigns, and so much more. Mainly, we just have fun talking about Disney stuff and how it can inspire changes and new lessons in marketing and running our businesses. Again, today we're going to be talking about Donald Duck's 50th birthday and what we can learn from it. So let's just dive straight into it. As I mentioned, this was a massive, massive campaign. I'm pretty positive it lasted more than a year, but I know it lasted at least a year, as some of these campaigns tend to do from Disney. So, the lessons we're going to talk about today from this campaign we're only going to talk about a couple of big lessons, but they range from things we can keep in mind about storytelling in our marketing, all the way to always looking for the unexpected opportunities in marketing. So that's the main things we'll be talking about today. So let's get into it. Now, this whole thing was kicked off by a 4-day, 14-stop tour to airports across the country, celebrating Donald's 50th birthday. Now, what's so funny about this one to me, or this aspect of the campaign to me, is that this whole thing was put together because Donald just wanted to one-up Mickey Mouse and his 50th birthday train tour around the country. So what they did for Donald was they partnered with, I believe it was Pan Am, to basically lease a 727 jet, have it painted for Donald Duck, and then they used it on this 4-day tour around the country to 14 different airports where they would hold press events. Now, that was something very unique about this. They didn't land and then go off to some venue within whatever city they were landing in and hold an event there. No, they landed, and then on the tarmac, they held a 30-minute press event with local media, with school kids from the local area, photo opportunities and little speeches and everything that went into that 30-minute press event basically on the tarmac. And then they loaded up and they left again. What was one of the fun aspects of this was you can see you can see here that Chip and Dale flew with the crew, and they were the pilots of the plane. So members of the crew on the ground waiting for the plane to arrive, as everybody had gathered up and they were waiting on the arrival of the plane, would start an audio clip of Chip and Dale and a humorous exchange as they came in to land the plane, and then they would hold again their 30-minute press event and get back on the plane and leave. Now, one of the other cool things about this part of the overall campaign was that Clarence Ducky Nash, the original voice of Donald Duck, actually flew with the crew on this 4-day tour. And for press members who wanted to interview Ducky Nash, they were given a special boarding pass for Duck 1 and could get on the plane and fly with them to the next city and do their interview on the way. Just one of those really cool aspects of it. I loved that. So the first lesson we can learn from Donald Duck's 50th celebration comes from this, and it is to always remember your story. remember, this I mentioned at the very beginning that this whole tour was built on Donald's obsession with one-upping Mickey Mouse. He's this irascible character, and so they built this campaign on Donald Duck's character, not just the character of Donald Duck. Now that sounds strange, and what I mean is they really thought about who Donald Duck is, and they incorporated that into the planning of this campaign. They used this. Mickey Mouse had his 50th birthday and went on a train tour around the country. So of course Donald Duck, in his one-upsmanship kind of way, would want to do it even bigger. So he got a 727 jet and flew around the country to 14 different cities. I love that. I love how it gives us such a quick and easy example to turn to for inspiration in how we need to incorporate our stories into our marketing. Now, you probably don't have a Donald Duck type character that you can use in that way, but part of understanding storytelling and marketing is really defining who your company is as a hero. We've talked about that in past episodes. Who your customer is, your ideal customer, and understanding their stories. And then you can incorporate either of those two into the marketing stories that you then tell. So you can create marketing campaigns that speak specifically to the story of your ideal customer. Remember, we talked in how to define our ideal customers about writing a story, adding a narrative rather than just having a list of facts, because it's so much easier, and it's so much easier to understand who that ideal customer is and to create marketing stories based on that customer's story. So keep that in mind. I love that about this first part of the Donald's 50th birthday celebration in particular, was that they built it so carefully on Donald Duck's need to one-up Mickey Mouse. I love that about it. Now, what else actually happened during this year-long celebration that I've been telling you about? Well, there was the Donald Duck's 50th birthday television special hosted by Dick Van Dyke. Donald actually received his honorable discharge from the Army. So he was actually drafted in, Donald gets drafted, in, I believe, 1941. So he finally, during this year celebrating his 50th birthday, received his honorable discharge after 43 years serving in the Army. And he was promoted to Buck Sergeant during this ceremony. So Buck Sergeant Duck, of course. And thank you, by the way, to Jim Hill at Jim Hill Media for collecting all of these images that I'm making use of throughout my presentation today, if you're watching. Then there was all the merchandise that was created, and this is a long-standing tradition for Disney. When they celebrate these big anniversaries, they tend to create special merchandise for them, and this was absolutely no exception. So from all the various theme park merchandise that was created and distributed throughout the parks, there were dozens of books written, stories written. There were film festivals held. There were Coke promotions, I believe, even. There were items created by, I want to say there was more than 100 Disney licensees who each created their own Donald Duck merchandise. You may have seen some of the old cans of Donald Duck pinto beans and all kinds of different canned foods that they included. So just a tremendous number of merchandising opportunities created by this birthday extravaganza. And there was the daily parade held for Donald Duck at Disneyland and Disney World, and I'm giving something away in this picture here if you're watching, and that's what we're going to talk about next. And this really is, of everything that they did for Donald Duck's 50th birthday, this has got to be the coolest story. The late and great Charlie Ridgway came up with the idea of training ducks to follow Donald Duck around during his daily parades. And so he talked to the other promotional people around him, his colleagues in Disney marketing, and they all thought it was kind of a silly idea, but Charlie didn't let it go. He called the then manager of Discovery Island at Disneyland and asked him if he thought it would be possible, the animal manager over there. And he said, well, I don't know, but I know some people I can ask. So he started calling around to his fellow animal handlers in the bird specialization in particular, and they said, and one of them said, yes, absolutely, it can be done, but Donald is going to have to bond with the ducklings from the moment that they hatch, or it won't work. So, of course, that's what Disney did. Disney flew a friend of Donald to Florida, to a hatchery, where Donald met 50 ducklings as they emerged from their eggs, and they immediately created the bond. And then Donald spent every few days more and more time with them, feeding them and getting them to follow him around, so that by the time they reached maturity, the ducks were indeed bonded to Donald Duck and would follow him around everywhere he went. And so Charlie Ridgway won, and they were able to actually have the 50 ducklings in the parades with Donald Duck. And there was an interesting moment that Charlie Ridgway talked about, and that was when they had the ducks follow Donald to just in front of Cinderella's castle, which of course is surrounded by a moat. And the ducklings saw the moat and immediately flew to the moat. So they then had to get the ducklings out of the moat, and they didn't do that again. But this was such a cool undertaking. Who thinks of getting 50 live ducklings to bond with a character over weeks and weeks and months, so that those ducklings can then follow that character around during a parade in honor of the fictional character's 50th birthday? Disney does, of course. Charlie Ridgway does. And that's just so cool. They even got as far as thinking they had to make a special birthday treat for the ducklings. They had to celebrate too, so they created frozen corn cakes that the ducklings could attack at will. And it also helped to keep them cool on those hot days. So that's, like I said, one of my very favorite aspects of this whole campaign. And now let's talk about the biggest lesson that we can learn here. And that is to always, always look for those unexpected ideas and opportunities in your marketing and in your business. Now, this is a lot easier said than done, so let's kind of dive into it a little more. There were an enormous number of opportunities that Disney knew that they planned into this, from all of the press events on the tarmacs at 14 airports around the country in 4 days, to having the press join them on the plane for private interviews with Ducky Nash, and then of course they would take those stories back to their various newspapers and radio stations and so forth, to all the publicity they were able to do for this duckling idea, from the publicity of those initial moments when Donald was present as the ducklings were hatched and began to form that bond all through that process, and then, of course, the publicity around the parades themselves at which the ducklings were a part, and then even through to what happened to the ducks after the parades, after the celebration was over. And you'll be happy to know that Disney made sure that each of the 50 ducks was given a Disney character's name and sent to a zoo, donated to a zoo around the United States. So each of the 50 ducks, I think it was all 50, made it to a zoo, and they were the stars of the zoos as having been Donald Duck's personal entourage during his campaigns. And of course, each of those created more opportunities as well. But hatching the ducklings and having them bond to Donald was out of the blue. It was a completely unique, unexpected aspect of this. Jack Lundquist did not sit down and say from day one, okay, I want to make sure that we have all these things, and by the way, make sure that we have ducklings to follow Donald Duck around. No, Charlie Ridgway came up with the idea as they were discussing all of their other plans. He was inspired, and so it was made a part of it. Now, again, this is something that's hard to do. It's hard to expect the unexpected, or plan to expect the unexpected, or plan to be aware of those unexpected opportunities. Hi, Carrie. So how can you do it? Well, it's hard to be super practical about this. But what it's something that you have to build towards and work on. So what I mean here is we always have to be learning. We always have to be finding new opportunities, new ways to market our businesses, new ways of doing business, new ideas for our products and services. So whether we do that through coaches, through resources like Marketing the Magic, wherever you find those resources to learn, Gary Vaynerchuk and some of the big names that are out there that talk about really truly promoting your brands and your products and services. Find those resources wherever those resources are. Take courses if you need to take courses. Take college classes if you need to take college classes. Although I probably actually wouldn't recommend that. They tend to be a little behind the times. But wherever you go to find that information, find that information. Keep learning. The moment you think you know everything you need to know, you're in trouble. So don't do that. Catch yourself if you think you know everything you need to know, and then go find another resource to start learning from. And turn to resources that have nothing to do with marketing. Listen to podcasts. Listen to the radio. Watch YouTube videos about Disney World or about hiking or who knows, whatever you are interested in. Whether they're directly related to what you do for a living or what your business does or not, keep turning to them. You will find inspirations everywhere. And now let me give you a couple of examples from my actual marketing practice along those lines. So, how do we start this? Let's see. Everybody is aware of the current craze of fidget spinners. Oh, God. They're everywhere. They're all over the news. They're all over Facebook. Believe me, I am a part of a huge number of marketing communities, and almost every one of them has people saying, I bought 100,000 fidget spinners. How do I sell these things? They are everywhere. Now, I'm not saying that I'm buying them to go sell them. I'm not telling you to go sell fidget spinners. I promise there's a point to this story. So, when I first began really learning about how to run a marketing agency, about how to not just run a marketing agency, but about how to find my clients in distinct ways. One of the first methods I learned was the lumpy mail method. Some of you may have heard of this. Some of you may even use this or have used it in the past, and it is still very effective. Probably even more effective today because so few people are doing anything with direct mail anymore. But the idea is that you send a letter to, your promotional material basically to your prospective clients with something lumpy in the envelope, so they're intrigued, so they open it. And so I tried this with a few early ideas with little magnifying glasses that I sent out for Google AdWords services that said your customers are trying to find you, but they can't because your competition is beating you on AdWords. And they give them a magnifying glass, and then I show them, on the letter that they're not ranking. So that was one idea for lumpy mail. And I tried that for a little bit, but nothing really resonated. And I quickly moved on to other means of finding clients. But so I put that to the side, and then I kept learning, and I kept finding these new ideas, and kept growing my business. So kept growing with my continuing education client, in particular, and then eventually acquired a franchise in that continuing education company. And one of my territories inspired this new lumpy mail idea that I'm going to be trying, and I'll be sure to let you know how it goes. But the idea here is incorporating those fidget spinners. So as I've learned more about psychology in marketing and positioning our brand and how to establish ourselves and the use of humor, when it's appropriate, when it matches the brand, I came up with this idea to send fidget spinners to all of my prospective continuing education clients in a particular market. That fidget spinner comes in the package, and the letter says, in case you choose those other guys, here's something to keep you entertained while you watch their continuing education. So just an idea. But that was, I didn't just come up with that out of the blue. I came up with that originally because I studied how to do lumpy mail, and I tried it, and the original incarnation didn't work. And then I kept learning. I kept joining these communities where people were talking more and more about fidget spinners and how to make use of them and other means of getting a customer's attention. And so as I began to piece these ideas together, this concept came about. Now, it may fall on its face. I'm not Disney. I don't have dozens of the best marketing minds in the world working with me to make sure I don't fall on my face. I certainly don't have the budget that Disney has, and that's okay. We're not doing things at the scale, and so we're not doing things at the cost that Disney takes on when they put together a year-long massive marketing campaign like Donald Duck's 50th birthday. What we can do instead is look for these new opportunities, look for these inspirations and piece them together in different and unique ways and try them at a very small scale, see if it works, and then if it does, then we can invest more. Then we can really spend the money and the effort to scale that campaign up. Now, another example kind of along these lines, very much similar, was inspired by Gary Vaynerchuk. I was listening to a recent episode of his show. I believe it was... No, it wasn't Ask Gary V. It was a keynote he was doing. That's what it was. He was doing a keynote for, I think it was the pool industry. And one of the things he talked about was something he did early in the days of starting Wine Library. And that was that he went out and he followed every single one of their new customers. They would find them on social media, on Twitter, and try to follow them. Now, I'm not saying do this. I'm not saying that I'm doing this. This is what he did then. What it led to, though, was that they would follow these people on Twitter, find out what they liked, and then send them a gift. No strings attached, no marketing attached, just a gift. Thank you for being a customer of the Wine Library. Enjoy this jersey. And it began to pay dividends. Now, that was the story that Gary Vee told. So I started thinking about how to do this. And I don't have the time and the resources, the staff, to go out and follow all of our thousands of customers a year for this continuing education company. But what we can do is as they come in, particularly in new territories. So this is the idea for us in new territories. I'm going to send a gift to each of my new customers in those new territories. Because in the new territories, they're not coming in at hundreds a month or even dozens a month at this point. We're still trying to feel our way through and figure out the right marketing channels and combinations and ideas to get into those markets. So while we're just getting the 1 and the 2 and the 10 here month to month, I can send gifts to those customers. And then if I started thinking, well, what do I actually send? Because again, I don't have the resources to go out and find them on all of their social media accounts and follow them and try to get an idea of what each of them likes and what they're interested in and come up with custom unique gifts for each of them that way. And so I was sharing this idea that as it was developing with my franchisor, my partner, my client, basically. I shared the idea with him, and then I shared the idea with my father, who is a glass artist. And he said, son, if you've got the margin for it, I could create custom glass paperweights that you could send, and these are very office-type customers that we work with, that I could create custom glass paperweights in the colors of their company that you could send as gifts. And I thought, boom. And there you go. That's the idea here. So I didn't just come up with this idea on my own because I'm a genius marketer. I'm not. I didn't just manifest this notion of sending gifts to all of my new customers and what those gifts should be and how it would work. No, I studied. I've learned about these different things all over the years, and it came down to an inspiration from Gary Vaynerchuk on one of his audio podcast episodes, combined with knowing how my client got started in his new territories, combined with talking to my dad who thinks completely differently. He's on a completely objective level here, and he's an artist, and combining what he can do into these other ideas that have come from all these different directions. That's what Disney does, and that's what I want to make sure that we focus on today. Because, and yes, it's abstract. No, it's not very practical. It's not a, go here and click that kind of thing that I can tell you about. But it's something I want to be sure that I express fully. I want each of you as business owners, as marketing professionals, and if you're a small business owner, you are both, whether you like it or not, focus on this idea. Find those inspirations. Find those resources that can teach you about new marketing channels that you might explore and new ideas that might not have anything to do with marketing or your business that will inspire you to find your unique place within your market. Now, that is going to wrap things up for today. And this is the last regular episode of this season. So this is episode 11. Now, next episode, next Wednesday, we will do a season recap. So that's what that episode is going to be about. We're going to go back through the last 11 episodes and some of the magical marketing minutes we've done this season, and talk about all the various things we've learned and kind of index those. And we'll even talk about some planning and ideas for season 2, and whether I'm even going to keep doing these seasons or we'll just start kind of doing it every week, because that's what I'm going to do anyway. So, guys and gals, I hope you have enjoyed this video, whether you were joining me live. Hello, John Morris Delancey. That is my father. Speak of the devil. So whether you joined me live, or you are catching the replay, or you're watching this on YouTube, or you're listening to this on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or any other of those podcast platforms, I hope that you've enjoyed today. I hope that you'll come back and see us next week to talk about what we discussed over the last season. And guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you real soon. Thanks.